I am Timbo B. Davis. I used to coach football, so now I have a podcast. And on today's podcast, we'll be talking about coaching a quarterback to play with conviction, to live with conviction. And how this guy, this Wilson A2000 pitching glove with the pitching mesh, might be the most valuable tool I've ever had as a coach in a different way than maybe you expect. Let's go.
As I travel.
Standing on the bump, you receive the call from the catcher. Drops down the 1. You know, you're bringing the heat, even if your heat is relatively medium. A 2 or 3, maybe if you have a full arsenal, he gives you the 4, the wiggler. Check him over at first, you know. So much of what I've learned has been learned through pitching baseballs in my life. I think pitching is a passion of mine. It's something I enjoy doing. I am a Tommy 1 survivor. The tattoo covers the scar to some degree, but you can still find it if you look in there, which is crazy and probably says more about my incorrect mechanics than anything. As a pitcher standing on the bump, you receive a suggestion. You receive influence from, you receive the coaching, if you will, from your fellow player. And I'll tell you, as a pitcher, when you are connected with that guy behind the dish, when you are connected with another human being who has done their homework on your abilities and your strengths and your weaknesses, and when you're connected with that guy who understands the opposing player, the batter, and he understands your defense's abilities and strengths, and he calls and he says, you're gonna throw the 2-seam down and away from this lefty because you're gonna get the 5-4-3 double play because our third baseman's good, our second baseman's good. You're gonna get that. You throw with conviction. You throw with full confidence. Whatever in the mind that's distracting you goes away, and your whole being is focused on throwing that 2-seamer down and away, make it a nasty pitch. When you learn to do and exist in this flow state, or what I'm going to use the term today, conviction, it's amazing the things you can do. I was never a great pitcher, but I had amazing friends behind the dish. One guy, Willie Paul, he's went to my high school. He's the coach. He's the current baseball coach there. They've won a state championship for the first time in years under Coach Paul's leadership. He's an amazing guy. And when he was behind that dish, he was pretty amazing. I trusted it. I was connected with what he was saying because he understood the full game. I knew he had done his homework. I knew he cared about me. I knew he cared about me as a human, and I could execute that pitch to the best of my ability. That's where we want to live as coaches. We want our quarterbacks knowing that we're taking care of them. We've done our homework. We're going to do our job. Throwing with conviction, confidence, flow state, whatever we want to call it, playing with that, living with that is today's podcast about quarterbacks. Let's get into it. Man, I love baseball. I know it's a football podcast, but it is a passion of mine. The quarterback disproportionately affects the program more than any other player in the program. And what we're going to do is start off with an inventory of quarterback skills that we want to think about, because this isn't just a podcast about the air raid. This isn't just a podcast about fast and wide, super wide splits. This isn't a podcast about the power spread or the wing tee or the veer. But what this is a podcast is giving your quarterback tools, coaching them up, influencing them to play with confidence, to live with confidence and conviction, so that they can achieve something really, really great. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna start off with the meaning of your offensive identity. Here's something that's interesting, and we've talked about it in previous podcasts. Podcast number 1 actually did. Humans don't learn by visual, tactile, and auditory. We were taught that, we hear that. That's not, those are preferences, maybe even styles, but they're not necessarily how humans learn. Humans fundamentally learn when there's meaning assigned to a given task. And so I really believe that your journey with the quarterback needs to start with you mapping out the meaning. First of all, what you're doing as a coach, and then how you can coach that quarterback. So what do I mean by that? Our philosophy, when I was fortunate to be part of a program as a head coach, was we coach the personhood, the student, and then the athlete in that order. And I think when you as a coach start with that, you can map your meaning and create your own quarterback educational system that teaches them with the most effectiveness as possible. I think it's important to understand that the quarterback position is wildly different in many different programs. We all know that, but does the leadership and influence style change based on your program? And I would argue maybe it should to some degree. Maybe you should think about how the quarterback is coached if you are a veer offense versus if you are an air raid offense. Or maybe if your system is built around a guy who's really not replaceable, which most of us in the high school level live a life of coaching a good quarterback, sometimes a couple that compete, but usually there's a top contender. How do you keep that quarterback room engaged and locked in? We'll be talking about that today as well. And then how do you get your quarterbacks better in all phases of life, whether it's the personhood, the student athlete, or the athlete? Let's dive into identifying styles of quarterback play and how we can best start to map meaning onto their skill set and what you're asking from your offense. It is wildly important to have a system of offense. I'm a Tony Franklin guy. That's where I learned from. Before that, I learned from a local coach, Numi Alalio, who was wildly impactful on me on scheme related issues. These are the guys that taught me scheme. We will come back to leadership and influence a little later, just because most quarterbacks' meaning revolves around the X's and the O's. They're really searching for the leadership and the influence, but their mind is tucked away into making sure the play call is something they can execute and they can go out and do. That's on the front of their mind. And so we start there and we build out the meaning of leadership and influence around that scheme, because we're meeting the players at that place. At the collegiate level, you can go out and get a quarterback who fits your scheme and your style. At the high school level, you have the guys in your building. And so you may on any given year have that ideal veer option, tough nose, gritty quarterback. You might have the guy who can sling it, but there's a really good chance, I think, in the 16 years of coaching and coaching programs that were 80 to 120 kids. So that's kind of the reference point. We had 3-4 quarterbacks in the quarterback room, not counting freshmen. And almost always they had a completely different skill set, wildly different, not even close to comparable. So what do you do with that? So when you're designing your scheme, I think a huge consideration needs to be the flexibility of your scheme, of your system, with the quarterback play you have. So a few quick thoughts on this. And this does not mean to not run the wing T. In fact, I think the wing T is one of the most dynamic offenses that's ever been devised in high school football. I think it's incredibly difficult to stop. I think it is an incredibly great system to get guys that want to march in lockstep and just run through a wall for their coaches and their community. I think it's an amazing offense. I'm a big fan of the wing T. I like gap scheme in general, but I think the wing T presents this gap scheme with deception. And that's nasty. That's nasty. So what are you looking for? And in my opinion, I played in the wing T as a tight end, and what I noticed was, the wing T was the quarterback would be a distributor He was often a motivator. He was a huddle commander. This is the guy that has the mud on his face, like in the movie The Program or something. And he's like, this is what we're going to go do this drive. He's probably, he doesn't need to be wildly athletic, but if he is, it's a cheat code. Some of the best wing T offenses I've ever seen is a quarterback who can run the veer stuff, the option stuff out of it. And it makes life very difficult for a defense when the quarterback's athletic. The passing game out of the wing T, so much attention is paid to stopping, trap, sweep, waggle, down, that you start to mix in the passes off of that. And especially you get the quarterback out to the edge. So one thought about this is if you're running the wing T, I think it's a great opportunity to develop quarterbacks in their play action pass game, especially because you're not really worried about height level. You can be short and get out on the edge and do it well. So the wing T is a great scheme. I think it's awesome. I think the wing T has to be balanced in its presentation. I think you do need to throw the ball. I don't know. I thought the best wing Ts that we've played throw the ball 10 to 20% of the time, and the stat line usually looks like 4 completions out of 6 attempts for 120 yards. Those are tough days when you're watching that team go and score on you. Hats off to Alaska legends like John Jessen. And then down in, there's a school called Soldatna, run by a coach named Galen Brantley. They run the power T, kind of a kissing cousin of the wing T, not the same. I think the power T presents some really difficult situations, especially when you have an athletic tight end that the quarterback can air it out to. Either way, both those offenses I don't think require the tallest quarterbacks. You're looking for the tough guy. I think it's a really important thing for those. Then you have like the veers and the power spreads. So if that's your scheme, you're looking for that tough guy. You might be looking for that running back. What if you don't have that tough guy? That's why I drift towards the power spread mentality. I think that power spread vibe can be adjusted. You can get the guy. When we first started at the school, I first started out as a head coach. We had the Tim Tebow copycat guy. He wore 15, a good Christian kid, and he just knocked people over and took souls on the field. And then that morphed into a year later with being wildly successful with a quarterback who was not very tall, who had the comparison of a penguin. That penguin, by the way, will be on the show later today. It's Conor Feckley, good friend and coach, and former athlete, and best man at my wedding. So there's a lot there. We'll get to Conor more. He'll get his shine a little later in the show. I think the power spread then, if you're going to run the air raid, do you have a quarterback who's smart, who can roll through a progression, who can get the ball out fast, who can distribute, who knows how to take a profit on a short pass, on a quote check down, even though it might be the first in the progression, depending on how you organize. More on that later. I think the quarterback can be short, but they have to then excel probably in the run game. Pocket moves are important. Some form of play action has to be important. And that can probably be really similar for the run and shoot style stuff. So when we first started, my upbringing through the spread kind of went through the run and shoot to the power to becoming full into Tony Franklin and the air raid system, which I still think is probably where my mind is, my personality lives in that. Although sometimes it's not the best thing for the team. Sometimes it is that power spread. In fact, Tony, if you talk to him, won't call it the air raid per se, because that kind of type, and I agree with that. I think the air raid is a system. And Tony would say that it's about, coaching, winning football, whatever it takes. And sometimes air raid guys are like, well, we're going to run mesh, this is what we're going to run, it is what it is. I think air raids, I have a love for it, but again, you have to have the quarterback who can get the ball out quick. I think that hand size becomes an issue in the air raid with RPO type stuff. And then dovetailing into another offense we've played around with, and that's the fast and wide system. You guys got guys like Randy Jackson, looking at what the Tennessees of the world have done. You've seen this influence at Oklahoma. You've seen it at Ole Miss. These wide splits that force defenses to declare boxes and makes it really hard to deceive. In fact, this last week in the Buffalo Bills Kansas City playoff game, a lot of talk was about the Spagnuolo blitzes. Those came when the Buffalo receivers were kind of tight. It can be hard when your receivers are tight to identify pressure for the O-line and the quarterback. So I think like the fast and wide stuff has a lot of merit. It's very simple. That's its genius, but it's also really requires, in my opinion, a quarterback who can throw a very fast screen to the field. If you can do that, if you can flip the ball out there to a guy, it's 2-on-2 and you're doing millennial Oklahomas out there on the edge, I think that those wide splits are really good. So to me, I love the veer and the wing tee. They're just not for me. I think you have to take into account your quarterback and kind of ask yourself what principles you're building it around. It's not necessarily like saying, oh, I'm an air raid guy. Oh, I'm a power spread guy. But it is saying we need to run the ball with the quarterback this year a lot more. Or it is saying we need, our Ohio concept or 93 or whatever you call it, whatever stick, whatever terminology you use, you need to build these things around the quarterback. That's going to be something that comes up over and over and over again, is that you need to tailor even the wing tee, even the power tee to the powers of the quarterback. The best I've seen every offensive system I just mentioned is when the quarterback fits it and the calls are directed and accurate towards that. So with all that said, I think the number one priority is going back to the pitching analogy, you as a catcher, knowing that if your pitcher does not throw a very hard breaking curveball or slider, don't throw the breaking pitch. At least not something you live on. Find the thing that you live on and build around that. That includes your backups. We'll get into that with Coach Feckley a little later, how important it is to develop your backup packages around things they can do. So as you're designing your offense, and assigning meaning to your quarterbacks. Why do you need to throw the out route? Well, it's because what they're good at and it fits the offense. Okay, fair. Why do you need to work on how quickly you can get the fast screen out to the field? It's because what they're good at and we can take advantage of leverages out there. You got to build meaning into that. From there, your drill work kicks in. And if your drill work is built on ladders and things flying at the quarterback and pool noodles. And I guess I see relevance in some things. Let's be real. It's not necessarily being attached to the meaning that the quarterbacks need to know. Let's go to drill work. This is not a podcast on drill work. And this is more of a side note. But if your drill doesn't look like an in-game situation, I don't think it's a very good drill. Hot take. I'm incredibly not in for ladders. Why not? Because there's no ladder on a football field. Is there time to have hot feet? Absolutely. I would almost say all the time. I'm a big hot foot guy. I like quick feet moving. I like the ability to quickly stabilize, get the feet on the ground, and have your feet aimed at a hallway down the field. But I think that it's really important that your drill work reflects the meaning of the scheme. We're not going to practice a bunch of drop back concepts with quarterbacks if we're running wing tee and we're booting out. We're going to become experts at all the different throws you have to make on the rollout. That seems common sense, but I think we forget that, especially sometimes in the summer, in the off season, early on training with our quarterbacks. We have to attach meaning to everything. So the first time you meet with your quarterbacks, present them with the full menu. And then the next time, take them to a gym, a field, wherever you can work within your state's rules for working with quarterbacks and your team in the offseason, and start to figure out what they like, what they enjoy, what they're good at, what they can repeat. And those are the concepts and plays and things that you're going to build your offense around. So all that to say, I was a ladder guy. I used to do that stuff too because I saw it on well, it wasn't Twitter then. I saw it on whatever. I saw it on YouTube maybe. I saw it on a coaching video. I think you need to make your drill work look as realistic to the meaning of your scheme as possible. Quarterback coaching is just coaching football, but more. what the point of this podcast is really like to talk about creating that connection between the coordinator and the head coach and the head coach with the quarterback. Coach Feckley will talk about the position coach, the quarterback position coach and their role. But this is more about the head coach and the coordinator who's not necessarily the quarterback coach. You have to be a master teacher in all of what you do. And while we've attached meaning, and that's where learning happens, is with meaning, you have to have the scheme to hang the drill work, to hang all this on, so they have meaning when they think about stabilizing their core and how they get the ball out and, and the separation between the upper and lower half. There's a billion podcasts on that. This podcast is really about that connection and that teaching, so that quarterback on the field knows you're just like the catcher in the baseball game. You've studied it. You've worked with it. You know what he's good at. You know what to expect. And together, you guys can make some really cool things happen. Well, how do you do this? The classroom. It's so vital. And again, meaning is the key. There are preferred methods of learning. And those include showing it, a play diagram, film, verbalizing, teaching the verbalizing. I think verbalizing is incredibly important. Every offense needs an operating system for the quarterback. And I think verbalizing a progression read is incredibly crucial to the learning process. For all quarterbacks with all learning styles, it's important for vocabulary, a base level of vocabulary that you need to build. And then movement, tactile learning. That's your drill work. So you build the learning through these things. The drill work can happen in the classroom. You can take a 3-step drop and verbalize, shoot, sail, crosser, curl all day long. You can do that. You want to really make it fun, play with some tools. What tools am I talking about? Go Army Edge has the VR. We have PS5. One of my favorite things to do in teaching and working with quarterbacks is to go to practice mode on Madden or NCAA, give it a random defense, actually let them know what it is though. Hey, we're going against quarters, and then run one concept against quarters a billion times. And just have the quarterback work the timing of, let's just say it's some type of sail, crosser concept. I'm working the sail to the crosser to the curl. And I can do that with a button. And then the coach can say like, hey, I'm heating you up. Here's a blitz. And maybe your progression really is shoot, sail, crosser, curl, or like a flat route. I'm using the word shoot for a flat route. The quarterback can play that. No danger to him. He's playing video games. He might be laughing. This is a great time for humor to be involved. Play that one play over and over and over again on the PlayStation, on the Xbox, and let the quarterback start to feel that out. No, it's not exactly football, but you know what it is? It's enjoyable. It's fun. It's measurable to see if the quarterback's understanding the concept. It builds connection and it's helpful. I think those are kind of like the things. I want to say those things again. First of all, are your teaching methods fun? Do the quarterbacks want to recreate them themselves when you're not there? If they're not, and the quarterbacks don't do some of the things you teach when you're not there, that's a sign. You should make an environment that the quarterbacks want to copy. Like really, I mean, if your coaching is helpful, the quarterback should be doing your coaching on their own and getting unlimited amounts of reps, getting unlimited opportunities to get better. Is it measurable? Is it actually helping? And this is really crucial that you have some type of measurable tool for the quarterbacks, whether that's how many times they correctly throw the ball in Madden, whether that's how many times they flub the verbalization after you give them a call. Put them in a helmet, put them in a classroom, and call red, north, sprint right, scat. and have the quarterback roll out and do his, do like even a half roll, and he can be like corner spot shoot or however you coach it in your offense. And those are things you can do without anybody else in the room. You can have the quarterback go do that on their own at home. Is it fun? Is it measurable? Does it build connection? And is it helpful? Building connection is crucial, because sometimes that catcher will say, you need to throw your changeup here. This is the time for it. And if you don't have a connection with that catcher, I'll tell you what, you're not going to throw the changeup as well as you could. There'll be a second guess. There'll be something keeping you from conviction. I think that's so important, that word, conviction. As a quarterback coach, do whatever you can to avoid being Charlie Brown's teacher. Hey man, it's a cover 6 cloud. The corner. Yes, they should know football terminology. You need to teach that. Be really careful about trying to be the smartest guy in the room. Really work for the quarterback to feel like he is with you in this process. It's important for you're the adult. You're legally the adult. You're the authority figure. You're the mentor. You should be working with the quarterbacks, not against them, or not make the quarterbacks work for you. They should work with you. And I think that's really important, because I know when I was early on, I would get this, I do it on this podcast, I get this coach ease tone. And I'm just like, this is what we're going to do, and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, sometimes players just hear wah, 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 wah. And so when you're coaching quarterbacks, make sure you know the level of their vocabulary. A freshman quarterback absolutely needs to be talked to differently than a senior quarterback. One of the challenges we have as coaches is that the private training sector has gotten wild. There's a lot of money in this. It's only going to get wilder. We need to be careful with the guru in the community. The guru, first of all, never has a ability to be wrong per se. What do I mean by that? The guru is not calling a play that puts that quarterback in danger. The guru is never calling a play that necessarily puts that quarterback for a touchdown. Everything the guru says is guru stuff. Again, Tony Franklin talks about being your own guru. I think being your own guru is incredibly important. Where does that start? That doesn't mean that you become the quarterback coach. What that means is you and the quarterback coach work together, and you do go out and you start researching things about how the ball should be thrown. And this is stuff you work in the offseason. We are still really, really offseason here. Obviously, the Tom House school of throwing is where football is at. The ability to quickly stabilize, get the front foot down so that you brace off. The weight gets to the inside of the front leg. Throwing a football is so similar to hitting a baseball. Another baseball analogy, it's maybe in some ways more similar to hitting a baseball in some ways. At least the lower half is very interesting in that standpoint. But I think it's important that you go out and you train yourself up and learn how to help quarterbacks, not just be the guy that has every answer to fix every problem and say, this is just how it is. I think you as a coach need to go learn how to help kids authentically. Don't be the guru who just has a sales pitch that isn't in the fight with the quarterback. You're in the fight with the quarterback. Like, you are with them. Quarterback play at levels of football is the pink slip or promotion for the head coach. You guys are in this together. You should equally praise the quarterback when things go right. And when things go wrong, that's a kid out there. You need to take that. You need to own that because you as a head coach put that kid out there. We as a coaching staff put that kid out there. So the guru stuff, real careful about that. If you are a guru out there, I love that you're helping kids. Be careful about the bill of goods you're selling them. Where are you getting your information from? What research are you doing? Are you challenging yourself to grow as a guru? Are you putting yourself in a position to say you will get better or, I don't know, money back? Put your money where your mouth is. And I think that's an important thing. You can't be an invincible guru. If a guru is invincible, they're not in a great position to grow. Even doing this podcast right now, I run the risk of that because I'm not actively coaching a team. Just be really, really careful how you pass on knowledge and the intent you pass on knowledge with. It's your knowledge. It's your experience. Make sure you're clear about that. You're authentic about that. And then coaches, head coaches, be careful about the bad mouthing of the guru. Don't be talking down about the guru to athletes because that fundamentally challenges the athlete's choices, financial choices. Now, you can be honest with them and you can say, hey, here are ways I would spend my money, whether it be college camps, number one, college camps, development with a quarterback coach. Your program should have a quarterback coach. If there's no quarterback coach, if there's no quarterback development happening, I think the guru's a good thing to pursue. But man, that's a tightrope walked speech about gurus. Let's move on. Mental resiliency is a thing that can be taught. It is also something that is under-taught, and it's talked about by tough guy coaches who have tough guy thoughts, but then don't provide tough guy opportunities for their quarterback that are authentic and attached to the meaning of the scheme and the program. The leadership and influence that your quarterback has an opportunity to be taught, reflected upon, feedback given, and do it again. And that happens everywhere from those meetings to the classroom, to practice, to the school dance, to the assemblies, to the hallways. You have an opportunity to coach everything. So what are some thoughts on how to coach mental resilience? One of the things we do, we have a mindfulness coach on our staff. And that mindfulness coach, we've called him the breathing coach. We definitely need to get the mindfulness guy. We need to do a mindfulness podcast on football and breathing, football and yoga. Really, really impactful for us because we have worked to help young men get out of the crunches of seeing red. When you're seeing red, you can't perform with conviction. You'll perform out of fear. And we want to get out of that. So studying mindfulness techniques, breathing, simply breathing belly breaths. If you get nothing else out of the mindfulness part of this podcast, breathe belly breaths. 3 to 9 deep belly breaths. In through the nose, push the belly out. Exhale. The arena. Never let the quarterback get stuff without earning it. Randy Jackson has this idea of every time a guy earns his way into a locker room, they have to win it versus another guy. And it could be a competition from a wrestling contest to a Hail Mary contest to a punt, pass, and kick contest to tiddlywinks to freaking rock, paper, scissors. Everything must be earned. And the quarterback should probably have to do it, earn it with twice the amount of intensity. The quarterback should face loss in practice around his teammates. Whatever that loss is, whatever that failed rep is, we have to build those in, those opportunities where the quarterback isn't perfect. That's hard to do. I say this every podcast. It's really important. This stuff comes after 16 years of making a ton of mistakes. You might be a quarterback out there that played when Tim Davis was a head coach at the school you were at, and you might be like, well, screw that guy. That's not how it was for me. You're 100% right. I've had to do a lot of growing up, and I'm. This is a reflection period in my life. One of my biggest things is you have to have everything earned. Full stop. Nothing's given. Nothing's given. And I think there's different ways you can define earned, but earned is a vitally important aspect. Where nobody shows up necessarily as the starting quarterback. Now, it might be obvious who that guy is, but he still has to earn certain things. Spots in the locker room, patches on his jersey, talking to the media, all that stuff has to be earned. It has to be earned in a way that makes sense for your program, your offensive identity, and your philosophy as a coach. Games with consequences are huge. Tug of war, lose tug of war. I mean, I don't know what the game is for you, but playing games, maybe even low impact games, low risk games, can be really important. Seeing how the quarterback competes. You're not just worried about the response to an end result, although that's really what we're looking to eventually do, is craft a great response. You're looking for the process of how they got there. How hard did they compete? Where's their mindset through the competition process? Is there a part in that process that chokes the quarterback up? Do you need to work on the visualization before the play? Do you need to work on a focus on technique during the play or whatever you're competing for? And then do you need to work on the response? Is he a cusser? Is he a throw the helmet down guy? Is he a break the iPad guy? Do you need to work on that? So I think working through those things help build quarterback mental resiliency, and that has to be coached. It has to be coached. Don't assume your quarterback's just a tough guy. Even if he is a tough guy, test him. Go find out. Fundraising and community service are brilliant ways to see this as well. Things that might seem beneath the hometown hero of the starting quarterback. I think sweeping parking lots. It could be physical. It could be selling some type of fundraiser ticket. It could be helping out at the retirement home. There's a bunch of ways that you can see where the quarterback's mindset is and then challenge them. Go with them. Maybe even do, if it's going to be difficult, take just one or two of their close friends or one of two of just the quarterback room and say, hey, we're going to go help somebody clear off a driveway, shovel a driveway if you live in a northern climate, which apparently everybody does this winter, except Alaska. Go help a fellow neighbor out. Do something that's going to be completely unrecognized, unpaid. You're just doing it to be a good human, and then see your quarterback's reaction off that. If it's a little sour, let them in on the secret. This is a test. We have a ways to go. If you can't be, resilient about going and shoveling an old lady's driveway, how are you going to be resilient when 4,000 people want to, mob you because you threw a pick six on the end of the half? These are really important things that you can do without ever getting on the field to build mental resiliency. It's easier to be tough when you know the challenge coming up. It's easier to build toughness, training wheels, if you will, to let the quarterback know what's ahead. What are you going to do when your girlfriend dumps you on game day or midweek? What are you going to do when your parents and you are beefing? What are you going to do when the world is falling apart? You got a bad grade. There's some other relational disconnect. Somebody on the team and you are having issues. What are you going to do when those things occur? It's not an if, it's preparing the quarterbacks for those things and giving them a playbook. They mess up on our plays all the time. So don't expect the quarterback to be perfect at this, but absolutely, what are you going to do when the media comes and asks you a question, both good and bad? What are you going to do? Are you going to point the praise to the offensive line? Are you going to point the praise to the running backs? Maybe the coaches, maybe your quarterback coach. What are you going to do when? I think that's really important. So you have to prepare the quarterback for these spur of the moment moments. Great way to start practice. The meetings. You're sitting there and you're actually getting ready to play your crosstown rival, and you just open up. The media is going to interview you on Tuesday, tomorrow. What are you going to say? What things are you going to go to? What are you going to do when are really good questions to start to prepare the quarterback for tests that are upcoming. Conor Feckley is a dear friend, best man at my wedding. I was best man with his brother and his wedding. Tight bond there. a connection, a special one. I didn't have a little brother. He is the little brother that I did not have. I coached him through high school. We stayed in touch throughout college. I watched him go break records as a quarterback at the University of Dubuque. I watched him go be a coach then for that university. And when I'm gone and done with coaching, I will look back on my time of getting to coach with Conor Feckley as one of the joys of my life. It's super cool to be able to talk with Conor about working through all the different issues that a head coach and a coordinator will come across, and how they can work together with a quarterback coach they trust and have a good line of communication with and are aligned and like-minded. Conor gives us a bunch of really good advice here for quarterback coaches, for gurus, for head coaches, maybe defensive-minded head coaches, maybe offensive coordinators. Coach Feckley knows what he's talking about. And more importantly than anything, he cares about the personhood of the player first, then the student, then the athlete. And I think that comes out here in this call. So let's roll with Coach Conor Feckley. All right. I have a super cool guest on, a guy that we used to have a podcast together. We were the backups because we got knocked down and got back up. It's Conor Feckley. Conor Feckley, one of my best friends, full disclosure, played quarterback for us and then went on, had a successful collegiate career, coached at college, coached at high school. So he's a guy who has been a position coach, the quarterback coach for a team I was part of as the head coach. And so we talked, we've led into this segment talking about the relationship. It's all been about conviction. Teaching quarterbacks, influencing quarterbacks to play with conviction. But before we dive into the quarterback relationship, I want to talk a little bit about the OC or head coach relationship with the quarterback coach, our relationship, if you will, and how thoughts for, let's pretend it's not me, it's somebody you don't know or whatever, it's a new staff. What's that like as a quarterback coach? What are you looking for from a head coach or a coordinator in that relationship?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for bringing me back on. It's good to be back with you. But yeah, I when I started my position, coaching and really kind of coaching in general, it was obviously straight out of college, and so obviously the model maybe a little bit more so in college than in high school, but obviously it's still the same as whatever the head coach says goes. And so I very much came from that, especially just being a graduate assistant coach. I was certainly underneath the, all in the lines of whatever another coach said I did. So it made that process, like I said, when I got the chance to coach quarterbacks, when I got to, join on at West with you and the other guys, obviously I had a chance to learn some great things about quarterback play from a handful of great coaches, across the United States. And so I was, excited to bring that new knowledge and expertise, over to the high school level and bring it back to West. And then, but ultimately at the end of the day, I mean, starting off with the most important position on the team, in sports in general. And, in most cases, like the head coach's job is going to kind of hang on the balance of how good the quarterback plays. So at the end of the day, like I said, as a coach, it's, as a quarterback coach working with an OC or a head coach, it's whatever the coach says goes. And so I kind of was balancing. I mean, obviously a lot of my quarterback stuff I learned in high school, I learned from you. So, I mean, we had a lot of similar understandings of, what we thought was best and what's right for quarterbacks. But at the end of the day, it was, anything new that I had learned or some things that I wanted to maybe instill or whatever with our quarterbacks, obviously had to get, run by you first and to go over it. And then there was times where, hey, you were just like, no, this is what I want. We're doing it. We were we did a very good job, I think, of working together and talking over and being able to explain why we thought, what we were doing or what we wanted to teach was necessary. And then there was times where we'd go and we'd try, and then we'd realize, hey, this kid can't do exactly what we're asking him, So we got to start over and figure it out. And like I said, and sometimes that would come back to, head coach or OC saying, this is what I want. And we would just, work to make it happen. But obviously at the end of the day, quarterback coach, got to be on the same page with the OC and the head coach. Cause if there's any rift there, it's going to make a lot harder for the quarterback to do his job and to get what the head coach wants done too.
Let's talk about that riff. Let's pretend it's not like your old high school coach. It's not the guy that coached you through. It's a new staff maybe you're on. You have no connection. You didn't play for him because you have coached for coaches that coached you. So you've had that. What advice would you give to a quarterback coach, especially with a quarterback who might be struggling with maybe a system, maybe a scheme, with maybe a play? How do you bring up that? How do you have that hard talk? It's like, hey, the quarterbacks have these skill sets. Maybe we're missing the point. What would that process be like for you?
Yeah, no, I mean, you can only do what the quarterback can do. I think you got to find his skills and see what he can do. And I mean, hey man, if he can't throw the ball for a lick, but he can take the snap and hand it off, well, then you're going to be running the ball a lot, and if he doesn't have any touch and he just likes to throw the ball a million miles per hour, well then, hey, that's something you kind of have to work on and game plan around as well. But it's definitely working on identifying, how you can put your quarterback in position to be the most successful, regardless if that kid grew up playing, and knows the ins and outs of playing quarterback, or he was just a random JV lineman that you saw before practice who had a cannon, and you're just like, hey, we can make something work with that kid. But I think it's, identifying what works, what doesn't work, and then catering around that. I mean, that's really the gist of getting going with quarterback, especially at the high school level, because it's, you don't need to be as complex, and then working on those issues. Like I said, sometimes it's going to take a few weeks or a course of a whole season to really identify what this kid can kind of grasp and then, get better at, or what he's continually having to struggle with. And so the sooner you can get out and start working with your guy and kind of identify, what he's able to, how he's able to learn, how he's able to process new information, and then be able to, rep that and kind of make it so it's like muscle memory. I think that's a big part in being able to, like I said, understand what you have in that kid, and then what it's going to take as a coach to, put him in the best position to be successful.
First time with the quarterback, you're new to a team, the quarterback's new to you, something like that. How are you going to start? Are you starting on the field? Are you starting in the classroom? What would be your preference to working with that quarterback for the first time?
I think on the field, because I think at the end of the day, you want to have just an opportunity to make the position and the position group something fun. I think if your quarterback is out there having fun while they're playing the position, it kind of helps not draw so much attention to how much pressure a quarterback may need to be in, and given certain times over the course of a season. But obviously, get him on the field, see what he's capable of doing, because I think from there, that's going to help immensely. And then, obviously, if you want to start in the classroom, just getting to know the person as an individual. And then, if it gets to the point where you're starting to kind of go over a little bit of scheme, just kind of pick his brain and what he knows. I mean, some kids, man, you'd be surprised. They play enough Madden to where you get them on a whiteboard or you get them talking football. I mean, they sound like geniuses. And so I know, hey, can we carry that knowledge into that, from the video games over into real life? That's something you're going to have to find out. But obviously just getting to know the person, figuring out what they're good at, what they're not, how much are they really dialed in about being a quarterback? I think it's a very early tell. Like whenever I'm at camps or, helping out at whatever the case may be, even, with the different levels of the high school practice, from the varsity to the JV to the C team, where's the quarterback's like interest level? Is he locked in? Is he focused? Is he kind of messing around? Is he excited to be learning these new things? Is he doing it with intent, or is he just going through the motion? I think that can be an early tell as how serious that kid is going to be about playing the position, and how serious he'll be able to, take the sport and moving forward, obviously, because he's got to be a leader for the team. So he's got to be able to take his job seriously, even in times where everyone else is goofing off. You got to have that. Your guy's got to be locked in and ready to go. But yeah, on the field, figure out what he's like, what his intent, how he works. Obviously, you'll get a lot out of that. And then in the classroom, getting to know the person, and then you have a chance to go over some scheme and basic stuff just to get a baseline of, some sort of quarterback knowledge, or whether you're talking about defenses or schemes or whatever. It's just a good baseline to kind of know where to start from.
Okay. So you said leadership. That like perked my ears up. One of the words I've been hearing, I've been seeing on social media is not shying away from leadership, but using the word influence. That's a really popular word to be thrown around because that's kids understand the role of influencers or what an influencer is. And it's a loaded term, but I think a term that our kids get. What type of leadership influence lessons? How do you help guide a kid to be somebody that's on the team that's going to influence guys? Because let's be real, big personalities and stuff on a team are influencers. It's one direction or the other. What type of lessons, what type of focus and intent are you setting for the guys when it comes to influence over the teammates?
Your quarterback is going to kind of bring life to the team. You're only going to be able to go as far as your quarterback is going to take you, I think, in most cases. And so when you have a guy who is, a leader or an influencer and can get all 10 other guys in that football field to, want to push a little bit more, want to play a little bit harder, he addresses the huddle and that guy quarterback steps in, everyone's paying attention and locked in because, this is our guy and we're ready to rock and roll. But yeah, somebody he's got like a selfless servant, because you just want to be out there trying to make everybody else better. And I know we preach it all the time. And like I said, it kind of falls underneath like that leadership role, but still you're influencing your teammates to be better humans, or to work harder, to want it more, whatever the case may be. It's going to carry over to how players perceive the team, how players perceive the head coach, how players perceive, their chances for winning a game or getting the first down that's needed. So having a guy who can create that influence and instill that across, and it works for defense too. I mean, you talk about a guy, a defense gets their stop and it's like, oh, we're good. Our guy's going to go out there and take care of work. And that just makes such a difference in the entire culture and identity of a team. The quarterback's influence is a major component. And man, to be honest, I feel like the answer could be different depending on the grade, the maturity level of your quarterback. I think the answer, it could be different when you're working with a ninth grader in a C team, or sophomore kid working with JV, or, the varsity level. Cause I've seen that interest, the interest and ability to influence raise as guys get older, as guys start becoming more, hey, that guy who might have been the backup on JV probably isn't going to be, or the backup on varsity probably isn't going to, maybe have the same level of influence as a starter. But once that guy becomes a starter, his level of influence, what he wants to influence to the team is going to raise. And so, and I've seen that over the course just, of our few years at West, watching guys come up throughout the program. As soon as they kind of get to that junior, senior year and they know that they're going to be the guy, they all of a sudden are, hey, coach, when are workouts? Or, hey, coach, when are we going to get together and throw more? So they start to kind of see, what that role of quarterbacking and how it goes beyond just, what you do on the field. And it kind of starts there.
That's all. I love that. Especially when you brought up the idea of the JV guy or the backup guy. Now he's the starter. Now, how has he been? How do you prepare? How do you work with high school backup quarterbacks? Period? Question mark.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think it comes down to, hey, man, is that kid the backup quarterback because there was not really another position for him, and that's just kind of where he's at, or hey, man, like, this kid's going to be good. It's just we have another guy in front of him, and so, and how much does that kid love football? If he loves it, he'll be interested when you're talking and addressing whoever the starter is. He's going to be standing there listening. He's going to be locked in to gain all that extra knowledge. So he is better prepared for when it is his turn. And like I said, and then you have kids who are out there and they're a backup quarterback and they'll go in and go through the motions and kind of keep things afloat. But as a coach, you're not really necessarily sitting there hoping that you have to put, all your eggs in one basket and he's the guy holding the basket. But yeah, I think that's something you just got to have to work on. I think kids start to kind of figure it out themselves as well, just depending on, their position on the team and how much they care about, the sport and what they're doing personally. Because like I said, just because a kid's a senior doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be, the greatest influence to the team.
Yeah.
So it definitely got to be a guy who's, loves the sport and loves being that, particular type of influencer in a positive way. You don't want a negative influence.
Yeah. So we talked earlier in the show about different quarterbacks and attributes you're looking for different schemes, and how even with like an air raid style may be different than a fast and wide style, maybe different than a power spread style. As a quarterback coach, let's just, for the sake of kicks and giggles, because we've coached at high schools that I would consider fairly normal, a program, 80 to 120 kids, somewhere in that range. You may have 2-3 quarterbacks with similar skill sets, but I cannot remember many times where the quarterbacks in the room, a quarterback room, had similar skill sets. In fact, the great majority of the time, we had skill sets that really asked for different schemes for the different quarterback that was in. What would you like to see from a head coach when you're sitting there as a quarterback coach, knowing that Johnny can do some fast and wide stuff? His quick game to the field is amazing. His fast screens, whatever. And Bobby is a heck of a power spread guy. What do you want from the coach, the head coach, and the OC, so that both those guys can be prepared without burning one reps or whatever?
Yeah, no, I think I think this is something that we may have even worked on too. It's just like identifying, who's your starter, who's the other guy, what do they each do, best, and then if you are in a situation where you need to play, one guy goes down and now you got to put the other guy in. Ideally, it'd be nice to not have to change everything. Now, hey, if this guy is just like your wildcat guy and you're just going to go in and start doing some wildcat stuff, and then so be it. But that's something you got to practice. You got to rep, and you want to make sure that whoever the backup is, whether they have access to the full playbook and they can do it all, or if you got to shrink it down, and maybe you take 5 plays out of your old playbook that they can do really well, that the rest of the offense can just, everything can run the same. You can have him operate that, and then maybe you give him an additional 3-4 plays that are just kind of ran when he's at quarterback. And so obviously that will help the offense, knowing that, hey, this is, this guy's in, this is how we're going to operate, or, hey, this guy is in and we're keeping things the same because he can still get the job done. But it's definitely working with the OC and the head coach that everyone's in a mutual understanding of this kid's capabilities and what play calls we have that can be used to put him in the best, place to be successful. Because, I mean, it's one thing when the starter, he's going to have pressure and a little bit of nerves and everything. Now you throw a kid in who, only got a few reps at, practice on Wednesday, but other than that, the rest of his experience playing quarterback has always been at recess or, after practice. So there's just a little bit of that, you want that kid to be successful. You want him to be as calm and as ready to go. And so if he does have to go into the game and he knows he has these 5 to 7 plays or whatever they are, he's totally confident in being able to execute them and get the job done. And I think not only is that important for the player, but it's important for the rest of his teammates to have that trust in that backup quarterback. Because, if you're hanging on and your starter is kind of your guy and he goes down, does everybody just all of a sudden panic and go, hey, man, we're screwed? Or, all right, hey, man, we got our guy. He's going to be able to go in there and execute, and do his things. And I think some of that starts with practice. Maybe, dial him up something where he can make a big play in practice and get the offense excited. It's just things like that are little memories that guys will hold on to and certainly give them confidence and show up when it needs to, if it's called upon. But I think, for a young quarterback, whether they're a starter or a backup, just making sure they have the confidence to go in there and get it done. I mean, they'll probably still be scared. I mean, usually everybody is that first couple plays, so like you said, from there, it's breaking it down. Hey, we know this guy's going to be a nervous wreck. We're running quarterback draw right away to just let him get some nerves out. A big, easy one. But whatever you can do to just kind of make it as easy and less chaotic as possible and keep the offense rolling. Because yeah, the offensive line or receivers start, complaining or, rolling their eyes when another guy comes in, then man, you're already in a bad spot. So you want to at least put that guy in a position to be confident and to be as successful as he possibly can.
The idea of building a backup quarterback package based on his skill sets and then knocking those out. We don't hit a lot in practice. We know, we try to keep it. So minimizing your full team, but also being like, hey, this guy can run the heck out of these 5 plays. They might all be runs and quick passes, or whatever. Man, I think that's powerful. And I think what you said about the teammates believing in, like, you know how to run quarterback power, man. You're really good at that. You said something I really want to hit on because we talk about all the time. Recess. American education needs more recess. The Conor Feckley story, this is not what this podcast is about today, although I'll probably drop hints of it. But like legit, the joke is, well, it wasn't a joke. It's true. You went from O-line your freshman year to a state championship, a surprising state championship quarterback. A spoiler alert, that story is actually coming up at the end of the show today. But you made a pretty big jump there, and you credit a lot of that to recess. Talk to me about that.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I was always the chubby kid growing up. So, I mean, when the pads were on, I was on the O-line. There was a lot of kids that were skinnier and faster than me and, were doing things. But, hey, we don't get pads at recess. There's no coach telling you, what position you have to go play at. And so I was fortunate to go to an elementary school with a lot of my great, still friends to today. And we would play football just about every single day. We were out there playing. And so, like I said, even though I was the big, the chubby kid, I was still throwing the football all the time. And, shout out to my dad, because he spent a lot of time just playing catch with me in the yard when I first started getting into it, whether, we were inside on the couch and I'm running around the hallway or going out into the yard and playing. So I was always just throwing a football, for fun, never with taking, real quarterback reps, just, messing around with friends or anything. Like I said, I don't think I did anything real quarterback until our first day of practice, as a sophomore. So I had, no experience in that regard to, actually being on the field and pads throwing a football. So luckily that, didn't hinder my ability too much back then. Cause I don't think aside from just messing around at practice, not a lot of throwings of football were done with helmets and shoulder pads on. It was mostly all recess.
How is there something we can utilize from that recess mentality in practice? Like, is there ways to recessify parts of practice?
Man, I think whenever we do Davis ball or our little mess around kind of like fun, game where everyone's take the shoulder pads off and it's kind of just like you're playing recess ball. That's what it is. And I think every time we do that, we are always surprised by somebody who ends up being more athletic or something than we ever, kind of gave them credit for. And so I think just being just watching these guys play without having to put much thought into it, or having to worry about a play, they're just out there having fun running around, and you can really get a chance to identify, kids' abilities a little bit more. And obviously everyone gets a little bit more excited and, when the ball's in their hands. And so, but it's fun. You get a chance to see that, I mean, like I said, you might see an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman move, like you've never seen him before because he's got a ball in his hand all of a sudden, or he's throwing the football 40 yards downfield where you're thinking, all right, how do we install like a tackle pass or something here? Because that kid's got a cannon. And I guarantee it's probably because he grew up playing football all the time. Kids don't just show up and know how to throw football really well. They've spent a lot of time playing. And so, and I think it helps out so much in the mental side of it also. I mean, how your mental and spatial awareness on the football field. I mean, I think back to it all the time. Like I'm not a super athletic person, but I was able to use my brain from just what I learned at recess. Everyone plays either man or zone if you're playing defense, in recess football. So you just get an understanding of where guys are at, where guys are running, and understanding that aspect. So I always loved being like the safety, when I was a chubby little kid, because I would always go kind of know what the quarterback was thinking or understand that, hey, that guy's running way down the sideline wide open. No one's covering him. I'm going to go creep, and try to get an interception or something. So I I think that social and or spatial awareness of just understanding, how to read things, how to be aware of guys running at you, running around you, closing windows. Obviously, on a football field that, everything shrinks a little bit and you kind of understand you're within the parameters of a field. But at recess, you could have it cover an entire mile to your left, that he's just, you don't know.
Yeah.
So you got to be aware of, just your surroundings and understanding, and then obviously, when you include football, real football, you can start going into actual spaces on the field and understanding that aspect. But yeah, man, just getting out and playing, not only, like you said, not only can it make you identify what a kid is, but you can identify how much that kid loves the sport. Is he just out there throwing a football around with the guys? Or like you said, is he the kid that mom's having to yell, from the car saying, let's go, because he just can't, doesn't want to leave the guys in the football field. And so I think it's a huge tell on the type of football player and really person you're going to get in your team.
Your quarterback or your quarterback coach, however you want to look at this question, and you have your parents at home. What's that like for the quarterback's parents? Because that's been a big part of our show today, is talking about parents in general, but really the quarterback's parents sitting in the stands and, a couple thousand people really don't like their son, or a couple thousand people think their son is the next, he's Joe Montana, throwing the ball over the mountains. It's like, what's it like going home after a game, and from your perspective as you've played high school and college, and then as a coach, what advice and what thoughts do you have for your athletes?
Yeah, no, I mean, man, that can be such a tough one because, like you said, the roars or the little comments from parents or the crowd or whatever, oftentimes are either they're yelling at the play caller, telling them to do something, they should be out there calling the plays, or they're yelling at the quarterback to do something. And I think a lot of people out there don't understand how hard it is to play quarterback, and regardless of the level, it's not something that's just as easy as it looks. So I think it'd be nice if everybody could have a better understanding of that, but that's certainly not the case. Playing the position, even if it's just at recess, can be difficult to make the right throw, to make the right read. And there's no pressure. There's no, you might have a buddy yelling at you or something, but you're not having, fans or your parents or whoever with that, on mind. But when you get to a real game and you're having to deal with, like you said, either a quarterback being great and getting all the attention in a positive way, or the other way around. Quarterback has a bad game, and depending on, how important that game was, it can be, the hate or the love can vary. Like I said,
Yeah.
the state championship game, is it, week one versus whatever opponent that you should have beat, but maybe didn't. So, I mean, that stuff's always going to be handled a little bit differently depending on, obviously how big the game is, and then really, how either great or poor the performance of the kid was. But I mean, I think a better kind of way to go about it is like when I've done camps in the past where I've, worked with kids that I'm just there for the first day. I spent one day with this kid. I don't know them, from beforehand, just met him that day. We're going through stuff. And you have parents that, this kid, he's all right. He can do some things really well. He does some things not so well. But you can tell that there's something there, and then you have parents that don't know anything about football that will come up and go, hey man, we really appreciate the work you did. He seemed like he had fun and learned a lot. And, as a parent, I don't know a whole lot. So I'm hoping that he's having fun and we're both being able to enjoy this. And then that's great. Yeah. And then there's parents that think that if they just spend a lot of money on trainers or at camps, that their kid will just develop and be, this special quarterback. And that's not always the case. And, every parent wants to believe that, their kid is great. And so you don't ever want to just, flat out, sit there and have to tell a parent that your kid's not any good at football or something, especially if it's one that's spent a lot of time and energy and resources to try to make him better, good at football.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, as a coach, you want to make sure that your quarterback knows that you love him, and that your quarterback, you can rest assured that, hey, my coach is going to have my back, and that we're going to work on what we need to work on, either to get better or to, maintain this level of success, whatever it ends up being. And then hopefully relaying that so that kid can know in his heart, like, hey, my coach got me, this is what we do. And I think that can, obviously that can be a little different if the parent is a guy who either knows football a lot or doesn't know football a lot, and, just wants to see their baby be that successful, winner, or, hey, as long as my kid's having fun and staying safe, then, we're good. Yeah. And so there's a couple of different ways to go about that. But I think either way, though, like I said, that relationship with the player itself, they got to know that, they're loved and they're counted on and respected regardless of, the outcome of a game or a situation or whatever it may be. Because, the parent thing can be hard. Some parents can love up on a guy after a tough game, and some parents will drill on a guy after a tough game. Yeah. And so I think it's, I think as a quarterback coach, you want your quarterback to be as clear, level-headed as possible. So if you know that he's dealing with stuff at home from, whether it's parents or just adult, role models in their life, that, because if it's a positive way, great, then build on that and can, communicate that and make sure that's going beneficial for coach and parent and player. And then if it's a negative side, man, it's reassuring to that kid, don't worry, we're going to get you to where it needs to be done. You're still doing everything we ask of you. You're still on track. We love you. Yeah. I'm going to do a better job of putting you in a position to be successful. I just need you to keep believing and keep doing what you're doing. All right. And then, keep the communication with me. What are you liking? What are you not liking? Because if you want to be successful and you want to make sure dad's happy or mom's happy or whatever, then, communicate with me on what we need to do to make sure that can happen. Because, you can drop a perfect play, but if he can't, if he doesn't believe he can throw it there or do it, it's not going to matter. Like I said, what can we do then to have that conversation with the parent to reassure them that your son's fine? Our play calls are fine. Like, we can make the adjustments that need to be made to, put him in, where he needs to be successful. You just got to have that communication and rest assured. And obviously, for whatever reason, if parents still not happy, then hey, I don't know. I haven't been a head coach, so I don't have all the answers for that one. I would just, as a quarterback coach, I'd say, hey, go talk to the head coach.
Well, and I think that you've kind of mentioned opening up this open line of communication with the parents, and there's some way that the quarterback coach, it's not a good cop, bad cop thing. Cause that makes it sound, because first of all, the whole point of this podcast is having the head coach connect well with the quarterback. But there is an element of, you are the ambassador, you're the representative. Hear that you can be a sounding board and hear those parents. I think parents just want to be heard more times than not. You might be in a position where you might have to coach up the quarterback on what to do when he goes home. Hey, I know you're facing pressure here, there, that, and you're not trying to in any way, you want to enhance the player, student, parent relationship. But the parent's not the coach, perhaps. And the parent might need coached up by you, and the player might need coached up on how to handle things. Players need to be coached up on that stuff. If we're really person, student, player, players, quarterbacks especially, need to be coached up on how to interact with other people.
Like I said, I mean, they're going to be the biggest influencer, and that's on and off the field. Obviously their character and the way they carry themselves. And if they're a good influencer and they're able to do that, on the football field, they're probably doing that in the classroom and in their social environment as well. People probably, gravitate towards them in some capacity, just because of the attributes and what they give off just by the type of person that they are. Now, like I said, that can all be different when a person goes home, and a person's home life. And so it's being, delicate to, not get too intertwined. Like we talked about, obviously we want to, make it a positive, relationship with everybody involved. And you don't want to, cause anything that would create some sort of backlash or, resentment towards either, for a parent towards a coach or anything like that, because, at the end of the day, that is that person's child. It may be your player, but that's that parent's child. And so, And everything, everyone's going to raise their little boy or girl a little bit differently. Everyone's going to have different cultural beliefs. And so you just got to, find an understanding and a balance of how to kind of navigate that and what to say to a kid and how to go about it. Because like I said, obviously, depending on the situation, how I talk to a kid or anything, could be very, very different.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, just, reassuring to that kid, regardless, that, he's loved, you're on the right path. You are doing the things that need to be done. Like, not to say that dad doesn't know, everything. I'm sure he's a smart, great guy, but this is, I'm the coach here. I guess this is what I do. I've been doing it for a long time now. Hey, if this is Joe Montana's son or whatever, then, hey, that's a little different. Maybe what dad says is okay. I don't know, but you just like to think at the end of the day, like, hey, you have that kid's best interest, going on at heart. And obviously, if he's struggling with where he needs to be, you're just kind of reassuring that, we're going to do what needs to be done to get you that next, get over the hump and get you moving forward, and hopefully get you to a point where you can feel good about, going home and dealing with, those other areas of your life that maybe, mean more to somebody, but are just kind of, in the shadows a little bit. I think we've seen a lot of that. Yeah. Guys are social butterflies, but then all of a sudden they're a little bit more quiet around home or something like that. So it's just, understanding the kid, the family dynamic, and how you can best just be there for them and, give them that love and reassurance that they need, so that, if they don't get it at home, they know that it's there and that they can keep coming to practice and to work, or to school every day with a smile on their face and excited to get after it.
Final question. It might be a longer question. I don't know. You as a quarterback coach, what do you want from a head coach? What's the ask? And that can be broad. That can be practice time. That can be chalk time. What are the things you would want from a head coach to provide the best experience for a quarterback in a program you're part of?
I think for me, one of the big things that I was always wanted to get, and obviously, you can get this time in the off season or whatever, but when it comes to practice, just that EDD time. I think as a quarterback, every position coach wishes they could have more EDD time. That's just, a given. But I think for quarterback specific, it's huge because you want to get them into a repetition of doing all their basic mechanics and movements the right way. For high school players, it's obviously you want to, start that in the off season, try to drill it, all throughout the summer. So that way, by the time you get to season, you're just, you have your warm-up routine and they're able to just follow along with it and, make sure that their feet are where they need to be, hips are where they need to be, their, arm movements and their arm positioning, obviously all that kind of stuff is just, it's all aligned with good habits, because it's very easy to, I think, get out of those, and to break those habits. If you for those gotta have it throws, if you don't have good feet, you ain't gonna have it. You got to have a good feet to have a good ball. And so I think it's being able to go out and get that repetition of, obviously just everyday things where you can keep them in a good rhythm, but, and then the EDD stuff, just for the sake of, what are we installing new this week? Are we doing something different? Are we asking more from our quarterback, whether it's a mental side of thing where it's just, we're working on emotion. All right. And we're working on a pitch, but like, we need to be able to have a few minutes, every day to make sure we're drilling that and, making that look as good as possible. So, so that way, if that's going to get installed and worked on this week, quarterback's got to make sure he can do a good job of it.
Like how much time do you want to warm these guys up, to work some of that stuff in EDD? What would be like in a quarterback's dream world, the start of practice? How long before we're live fire or even throwing in drills with other positions?
In college, I came from a very old school head coach, quarterback coach who, obviously had a little bit longer practices, but quarterbacks are usually out there 15 or 20 minutes before everybody else. And that's just working on like our basic warm up throws, simple stuff like that. And then we'd get 30 to 40 minutes of actual EDD stuff, where that's where we're repping our footwork drills, we're repping different types of throws, our drops. We're really putting an emphasis, and maybe that's on Monday. You have the extended version of your EDDs, you know what I mean? But it's getting that time to really just continually work, proper technique, proper, all that kind of stuff. It's going to pay big dividends when it comes to running through all of it, on the football field there. But yeah, I always try to get my quarterbacks out a little bit early so that they are warmed up by the time that the receivers and everybody else are out there. Because, receivers and the other guys are pretty much just ready to catch balls. Hey, we're ready to go, man. But I don't want my quarterback coming out there and just chucking a 40-yard bomb right off the bat. I want to get out there, start working on some smaller throws. Let's get warmed up. Let's get stretched out. So let's get, let's make sure our arms aren't fatigued in any way. We're in the, we're warmed up and ready to go. And I think that sets the tone for how the rest of your guys are going to practice, moving forward. But if you can get your quarterbacks out there a little bit early, maybe get the centers out there, get some snaps with them so they can get a little extra time to get some snaps in, get the quarterbacks just, at least start getting loose. So that way, if you're with the receivers, we're doing early outs, like don't have that be your first throw of the day. Let's have you be warm and ready to go a little bit and have your mind locked in. So that way, when we do, cut over to start going live and stuff, we're not lacking at all. We're locked in. Our feet are good to go. Our arms are warmed up, and we're not wasting any time. We're setting the tone and getting going.
Beautiful. Final last question. Last question. Chiefs, Eagles.
Man. Oof. Man, the old saying, offense wins games, defense wins championships. And I think a lot of people, obviously, I love Jalen Hurts, and I love, and obviously, Mahomes is Mahomes. You got two fantastic quarterbacks. And I think there's a lot of great things about both defenses. So, man,
on the spot,
no one's been able to beat Patrick yet.
All right.
No one's been able to beat Patrick yet.
Is that a Chiefs?
So that's where my brain's telling me. My heart's telling me Eagles, but I think my brain is telling me Chiefs.
All
so
right.
I think
I'm going
go
Eagles.
with Chiefs.
I'm going Eagles. I like the Eagles defense, man.
I'd be totally fine
I like
with
the
it.
Eagles defense.
I
like
do too.
Saquon. I could be way wrong. I'm saying it on air, which means it's going to be the Chiefs that win. By the way, I'm saying this on a podcast. It's going to air before the game. It's going to be the Chiefs because of that. But I'm going Eagles.
Chiefs. Yeah, that's why I said Chiefs. I was hoping they'd be the same way. No, I think there's been so much attention around, the Chiefs and the refs and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
People forget how good that Chiefs defense has been and how Spagnuolo, whenever they need a play call, they, and their guys execute. I mean,
Chris Jones.
Watching the Bills game last week, for all the heartache those guys, the Bills have had, and you could just, how badly they want to beat the Chiefs.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I thought the Chiefs wanted it more.
Yeah.
Watching them play, it was just like, here's a team going for the third time, and their guys out there are just playing like it's their first ever. I mean, it was just, so I think if you can bring that type of, and that's why the rematch between Philly and, in Kansas City it's going to be a really good one. So, but no one's been able to knock off Patrick yet. And so it's hard to kind of vote against that guy right now.
I just love Devontae Smith, Saquon, Jalen. I think the Eagles are a better version of the Bills. They have a defense that is maybe more stout. Although the Bills played big when they needed to.
Man, they did play. Yeah, they did. They had some injuries in the back end that they were still doing all right. But and last thing I'll say about, for any young quarterbacks or for, quarterback coaches out there getting into it, go watch how Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts handle the media day. Watch how they answer all the questions and how they carry themselves and how they talk all about the team and how they talk all about, glorifying, their teammates and their coaching staff. Because that's where it starts. And so you talk about two guys that you can really get a lot from and how to carry a team and how to play the quarterback position on and off the field. You got two fantastic role models at right there. So I'm super excited for it. Like I said, I'm big fans of both of them, the way they carry themselves, like I said, both on and off the field. They have something rare that not everybody has. So it'll be awesome.
Coach Feckley, awesome having you on the podcast. We'll have to make the studio bigger and do this again in person sometime. So
yeah, I think I remember how that's done. Yeah,
we can probably figure it out somehow. Much love, brother. We will talk to you soon.
Yeah, man. Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Super cool there with Conor. Thank you so much for your time. That was great. Conor's got us through practice. Let's move. He's got us through working with the parents. He's laid a bunch of groundwork. Let's finish off this podcast by talking about how you work with your quarterback in game, and then those after game moments as well. So in game, I think the number one question that the coach has to ask themselves is, what does the student need? When a teacher sees a student flailing, sometimes what that student needs is most definitely not you to come over and browbeat them. I think when a teacher sees a student struggling, sometimes the best thing that teacher can do is say, go take a walk down the hallway, go get a drink of water, stand up, walk around. If you're really caring about the student learning and actually growing, I think you need to recognize that if you're in a football game with 4,000 people giving you a thumbs up or thumbs down, there's a really good chance that quarterback's going to have emotions, even if they're the most mentally resilient guy you know. So sometimes providing the quarterback what they need, usually it's wait time. I've discovered, I think that quarterbacks need immediately coming off the drive, even a good one, 10, 15, 20, 30 seconds to just go sit down, drink water, and go talk to the quarterback coach. You need to not be in their ear as soon as the drive happens. You, even if it's good, you run the risk of cutting growth off. As the coach, the offensive coordinator, the head coach, you need to give the quarterback wait time and allow them to come down a little bit emotionally. Give them the tools then to recenter, whether that's RPR. If you've been studying that at all, check it out. Google it, RPR, reflexive performance reset. Maybe it's 9 breaths, 9 belly breaths. Maybe it's finding a mental mindfulness coach, a coach that will help guide them through breathing, through resetting through the chaos. Maybe it's box breathing. You see the SEALs do that. Google box breathing. You got to give the quarterback tools to mentally reset immediately following it. And if you're dog cussing them because they made a mistake, even if it comes down to like a bad mistake that was just sloppy, and you got to be really careful with you might need wait time. What am I talking about? The quarterback. You as a coach probably need wait time. Think about that. All right, so the quarterback has feelings, good or bad. Self-advocacy has to be something that's taught and instructed to the quarterback leading up to this moment. Self-advocacy might even come in the form of, I'm the backup, I want more playing time, I want more reps. Having the hard conversation. Coach Feckley and I talk a lot about the parents. And the parents are the agent of the athlete. The parents are there for number one, the kid. As they should be. They're the parents. But the students, when there is a crunch, whether it's playing time or performance or whatever it happens to be, has to have the ability to advocate for themselves. And then we as the adults in the room, the teachers, if we're truly teaching the game, have to give the open door for that self-advocacy. Otherwise, that conviction to play, that conviction to live a certain way, that conviction to speak out on social media, that conviction to go get a job keeps sliding to their parents. We've talked about the bulldozer parents or the helicopter parents or whatever style of parenting. It's not an indictment on that. It's just simply for a kid to grow, they got to work out. And they got to work out their self-advocacy. So build that ability in. Is it a scheduled time and place that you have a sit down with that player and you just have a cup of coffee? Is it an open door policy? Whatever it is, it's got to be very clear to the athlete that you are open to self-advocacy. It's maybe one of the most important things we can give all our athletes. But the quarterback position, with a disproportionate effect on the game and the scheme, and a whole bunch of other things, you probably should be listening when the quarterback has concerns or thoughts. One thing that you can do in baseball is you can shake off the catcher and say, that's not the pitch I want right now. In football, it doesn't work quite like that. But if you have a quarterback who is hesitant about a scheme and after working it and working with the quarterback coach is shaking that pitch off, you need to listen to that. Otherwise, you're really preparing to fail for that event. All right, final thoughts. I was fortunate enough to be a young coach that thought he knew everything, that knew nothing. And the bravado wasn't always enough for the internal me to realize that, no, there's a lot I don't know. What do you do when your quarterback goes down? What do you do when you don't have any quarterback? And Coach Feckley came around as a sophomore. He was a C-team O-lineman. Nobody in the community knew this kid from a quarterback perspective. They knew him as a fun-loving O-lineman. And we go into our first game in 2010 versus a bitter rival, the school I came from as a coach, Service High School, them Cougars. And we start off with one guy, it doesn't work out. We start off with another guy. We go away from that. The protection was wild. We didn't put our quarterbacks or our team in a great position to succeed early on. Go down by 18 right away, and we put in Conor Feckley. And I think the first thing he did was complete like a check down over the ball route off of a curl concept we were running. Makes one guy miss, makes a DN miss, hits it, first down, okay, cool. And then he starts throwing, these 45-yard fade routes. And he doesn't look like a quarterback who should be able to do this. And the first thought I had instantly was be very careful about judging a book by its cover, because there is no way he looked like he should be able to be doing this. But like he talked about, he's a recess dude. He plays ball. And I don't want to throw everything out that I just said. But sometimes those recess dudes, you got to let them spin. Conor brings us back and we get tie the game. I think he throws like 3 picks in the game, a bunch of touchdowns. I should know the stats by now. I've told this story a billion times. Down by 18 again. Come back again. And I remember one of the touchdowns that he threw. He runs over to the sideline, and this kid, he's back when you could just cover your face with like eye black and like all these patterns and stuff. He comes over and he just starts giving this fist bump, and the enthusiasm was just, you couldn't miss it. Just the joy. Conor was playing with conviction. He was playing with conviction from a place that he brought. So young coaches out there, sometimes the guy with that joy is going to be the one that plays with that conviction. And sometimes we need to avoid being the guy with the chalk, or more importantly, not the Charlie Brown teacher, but empower a young man to go out and play with joy, shock the world a little bit, at least on one Friday night in America. I'm Timbo B. Davis. This was the Rocketboost Coaching Podcast. We'll catch you next time.